When using classic tweens, we can provide customized motion guides for an object to follow as it is animated across the stage. This lesson demonstrates this feature. So here we have what is basically a blank stage here, and we have one layer that I've named Transformation, and within our library, we have this little ball movie clip symbol. So I'm going to drag this out onto the stage. And what we'll do is position it towards the bottom left. And then we want to create a classic tween from this. So let's go to frame 50 and then right click on that frame, choosing Insert Keyframe. This inserts a new keyframe for us at frame 50. And then we can click within this span of frames, right click, and choose Create Classic Tween. Selecting frame 50, we can then move our object over to the side here so that upon playback, we have a classic tween where the ball moves from the left to the right of the stage. So what if we want to have this ball actually move in an arc and sort of go to the top of the stage and then settle back down at the bottom? Well, we could go through and pepper our entire frame span with little keyframes in which we adjust our object or adjust the X and Y position each time. But that's not going to look all that great. We want something a little smoother than that. And we don't want to have to go through that hassle. So the answer is to create a motion guide. So how do we do this? Well, if we go down to our transformation layer, we can right click on that and choose Add Classic Motion Guide. We can see that something has happened here. We still have our transformation layer, but it's actually been nested within this guide layer. And the guide layer itself tells us that it's the guide for our transformation layer. The icon for this layer shows up as this little path. So right now, we don't actually have anything on that layer, obviously. So what we need to do is actually create our motion guide. To create the motion guide, there are a number of different ways we could do it. We could go in and use something like the pencil tool, but I'm actually going to use the line tool and then modify that line. So what we'll do is just start right here, and I'll just kind of create a guide that goes from one side of the screen to the other, just like that. So now we have a motion guide. But if I choose my selection tool and then hover over this particular line within our guide layer, I can then click and move so that it actually goes like that. So right away we see that, hey, this movie clip symbol instance has now snapped to this guide. And if we scrub, we can see that while it starts there, there's something wrong. So what's wrong is that if we select the object itself, we can see that the actual transform point aligns with our motion guide. To actually get this to work properly, we also need our other keyframe at frame 50. We need the transform point to align with the guide on this side as well. So simply moving our object will allow us to do this. Going back to frame 1, let's actually adjust this as well so that it starts at the end of our motion guide. So now, since on frame 1 and on frame 50, our transform points are aligned to the motion guide, we should be able to have this object actually follow this guide layer from beginning to end. And we can see that it does that quite perfectly. So you might be wondering, well, are we going to see this black line when we actually publish our animation? And the answer to that would be no, you're not. Any guide layer that we create won't show up in the published animation. So if we go to Control, Test Movie, Test, you can see that there is no guide layer. We simply see the actual animation that was intended. So this lesson has demonstrated, using classic tweens, how to use motion guides by creating classic motion guide layers within Flash Professional CS6.